Good
Go
morning,
ahead, Bart.
everybody. You guys missed it. Welcome, Drummers Education Connection. I'm Bart Robley. I am here with three of the greatest drummers and fantastic friends and business partners. Below me in Tucson, Arizona, is the one and only Chip Ritter, who I cannot
Hello.
spin my sticks nearly as long as he can. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, right-hand corner, left-hand somewhere, Rick Stojak, just back from vacation. Look at that handsome devil. And then off to my, let's hold on. I'm a drum teacher. Let me see. This is going to be off to my left. Yeah, that's right. My left is my other left. See, it's right there. It's my right. Is Jeremy Steinkohler in the Bay Area, the one and only, the jazz legend himself, Jeremy Steinkohler. And today we're talking about three peckered billy goats.
That's my coffee.
That's his coffee.
That's my coffee.
That's the coffee. Three
Best
peckered
coffee.
billy.
Oh.
Anybody that drinks three pecker billy goat, come on, I have tons of respect for that. We are talking today about finding a student spark and what that means and how to find the spark within a student. It's kind of assumed that I think every time you get a drum student, they obviously come to you because they want to take drum lessons and they want to learn and everything like that. But as we all know, as drummers, once you get into taking drum lessons, practicing and learning the instrument, there's a lot of discipline and it's not easy. And so sometimes I think we have to dive deep in with a student and find out what makes them tick. And I think that the finding the spark is just a fantastic thing to talk about. So I'm going to throw it to you, Chip, down in Tucson.
Hello.
You, my friend, are the master of finding the spark in a student. How do you do that? How do you go about it? Can you explain what that is?
Basically, what that means to me is to find the spark in a student is to talk to them and find out what their favorite aspect of drumming is. Now, usually, my younger students, I'd say from the ages to 5 to 16-year-olds, most of them say it's like, I love drumming because it's loud or that I get to hit stuff, But to find the spark, you have to observe and interact and ask them to play for you. I usually get them to play something for me, what they want to know, what they want to play. And then once they play from that, I take that and expand that into the next lesson. Finding a student's spark is basically about, then exploiting that is the key to engaging a student and really getting them going on that. I ask questions like, how do you like this beat? What's your favorite beat? Who's your favorite drummer? And then if they have an answer for it, I'll say, well, why? And if they don't have a favorite drummer, I'll play like a little drum solo for them or whatever. And then I'll ask them, what was your favorite part of that and why? And try to get a little bit more into the reasons that they're drumming, the reasons that they wanted to do drums. And finally, one of the last resources that I use and almost always helps me find the spark in a student is to talk to their parents. You know what I mean? It's like, what are they into? It like, what if they have a favorite video game? Then if they have a favorite video game, then there's a soundtrack involved with that almost 9 times out of 10. And I can use that material to keep going, So keeping a journal on each student also helps me. I usually do it voice to text on each student. And I take notes on where they're at or what really worked on that one lesson. And that really helps me find the spark of each student.
Nice. That's outstanding.
Nice, man.
Yeah, very well done.
That's what I do.
That's great, man. That's very cool.
Well,
Rick,
I'll take a lesson with you then, Chip.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna throw it to you, Rick. We all love your studio, and we talk about your studio, and we talk about your books a lot. For those of you who maybe have not seen the show, Rick has a series of books. That you got one there?
I got 3 of them, right?
You got 3 of them. You got 3 out of the 4. Here, hold it up close. How to Build a Drum Groove, a whole series of them.
Fantastic books. Highly recommend. Just buy them. Don't ask questions.
Absolutely.
Just buy them. Don't ask questions.
Yeah.
Folks. Jeremy's in them.
They're really good. They're just
good.
They
are, man. And his whole vibe, man, your whole vibe, we joke about this, but I'm very serious about it. Rick's vibe, when you're around him, you can't not be in a good mood. The guy's got this whole positive energy that's amazing. And
Hey.
I can imagine finding a student spark, watching some of the videos you put up, all that stuff that you do, Rick, is so cool. How do you go about it? How do you go about finding the spark in a student?
Well, I think it starts with the 3-peckered Billy Goat coffee. and then maybe being half Italian and going up to Mount Shasta with my wife, healthy living. So I've got to have my own spark, man. I've got to have my own energy. I've got to be on it, which is natural. It can't be forced. So that has to do with me taking care of my mind, taking care of my body. That's
Nice.
number one. So I like to make sure I look like a drummer. You wear stuff that makes you look like a drummer. So when a student comes in, they walk into my studio. It's like a playground. So
Mhm.
if you can't get a spark walking into this room, well, maybe you should play tuba, man. Because you
Wow.
walk in here, everybody walks in. It's like, this is the coolest room ever. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I made it. I wanted you to feel like you're at a gig. I
Mm.
want all of the drums tuned. I want the finest drums that you can play.
Mhm.
And the best cymbals. And I just think that that's part of it. Like, people look forward to coming in and hanging out. So, I find, like, if you're just like there on a drum pad in a little studio, it's hard to get that spark going with students. So,
Yeah.
for me, it's fun. When they walk in, I tell them, "Hey, man, you don't have to play every drum in this room, But I put them on a big kit. I'm happy to put them on a big kit, And then I'm like, "Hey, just go off, man, hit them. Don't you want to feel like Neil Peart? Let's see your version of Neil Peart. Get them all fired up." And then it comes down to asking questions like what Chip was saying. What are your goals? That's a big one, which I'm sure we could all talk deep on goals. But then what are you into? And then I have to do my experimenting and have some knowledge about music. If they say they're into a band, well, I better know what that band is. If they say they're into Slipknot, if I don't know what Slipknot is, I'm lost,
Yeah.
or if they say, "Hey, I'm into Miles Davis," it's on the other end. I kind of need to do that. So that's the fun part of being a real educator is discovering all the different styles of music and then being aware of them, and then you share them. And then you'll always find, to me, I always find once I get inside of the drum part, I love the song.
Yeah.
It's such a phenomenon to me how that works. There's so many songs that I don't really like, I wouldn't normally listen to. And then I start drumming along to it, and my student starts drumming along to it. And you find, like, man, maybe I didn't like that song, but I sure like the beat. So
Yeah.
that's the beginning. And then I always work to not extinguish the spark that they do have. Like, they might come in all fired up and want to rock. I just kind of use a lot of intuition on when it's time to start working deep on technique, and when it's, when to work rudiments and all. But I don't start out with all that stuff. I start out with groove, and that's in the book, which is just, here's a beat and here's 10 songs that that use that beat. So I just get them grooving to music. And so that's worked pretty well.
Awesome.
So what about you,
Fantastic.
Jeremy?
That's great, Rick. Really good. I do things a little bit differently, but I love always hearing about you guys and how you do it, because it always
Yeah.
makes me think about other ways that I can do what I do differently and better and add elements. It's great.
Well, everything is valid, though. Every way of
Yeah,
teaching.
that's right.
You
Yeah.
have
That's
to
right.
teach the way that you teach.
That's right. You got to be yourself, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and that
Exactly, yeah.
brings me to if I had to sum it up in one word, the most important aspect of, what you need to bring to your lessons to help your students find their spark, it would be enthusiasm.
Right.
I feel like I mean, I just kind of naturally get excited when my students are into stuff and when they do well. And I don't know that that's true for everybody, but I know it is for you guys and all the teachers that I know who are really great. They love it when their students succeed, right? And so it brings me great enjoyment when I help them do that. So I don't have to manufacture that. And I think that when, imagine walking up to someone, a stranger, and sitting in a room with them for an hour, and they get super excited when you're doing something, even half-assed well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. There are not a lot of people
Yeah.
that are going to get excited about that for you. So I think that's a big piece of it. The other thing to mention is that, it's absolutely different for different people. For some people, it's all about playing the song or playing, I've always wanted to be able to play Tom Sawyer. They come in and that's the goal. Okay, we're going to work toward that. That's going to be 2 years away, but we're going to work toward that. And we're going to be thinking about how the pieces that we're going to work on are going to fit into toward that goal over time. For other people, might be playing in a band. So, okay, how can we get you most prepared to play in a band or to get your audition and get into the jazz band in high school? And I have some students who come in and don't ever want to play in a band. They just like the idea of drumming and want to just play the drums and get good technically at the drums. And that's cool too. I came up with these patches. You guys maybe have seen these. See if you can see that. There's I made these patches for my students who get through the Wilcoxon books, and that's been a motivator for those books for which many students think of that historically as like a chore. Oh, those are really brutal technical books to work through, but the patch all of a sudden gives you a little motivation.
I have a question for you guys about the Wilcoxon and all of that. Are a lot of the students that work on that, are they younger and are they in school bands?
Because
I have both. I have both.
Yeah, I do
Both,
too.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll put it this way: I've never put a student through either of those Wilcoxon books and not have them come out the other end of it with their hands completely transformed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I say that to other students that are, sort of wondering about it, or, if this is what they need. I mean, it's my job to think about what they need, right? And to tell them what it is to work on. And a lot of times, we talk about goals. Oftentimes my students won't know what their goals are, right? Part of the process of through the lessons is to help them figure that out.
Yeah.
And I'll always be pushing them. And, a lot of kids would go, I don't know, I just want to play the drums. Like, okay, well, not a lot there for me to work with. So I got to do my own plan. And that's fine. But then over time, I might check in with them. Okay, you're going to be gone for the summer. What are your goals? Or where do you want to be in 6 months? Or where do you want to be by the time you're out of high school? Or how do you see music fitting into your life? As you're about to go off to music school, whatever. So, and the other thing worth mentioning is that, the spark, I know maybe for you guys, like you, as soon as you got bitten by the bug, that was it. And you were all in for the rest of your lives. But, my relationship with playing has ebbed and flowed over time, and I wasn't all in. I haven't been all in every day since I started playing drums. I remember when I was in high school, a couple years after I'd been playing, the drums kind of sat and collected dust there for a little while. And I had lost the spark, I didn't have a teacher that I was liking. So that kind of dropped out. And there was a little while I didn't have any bands to play in. And then I got to high school and there was opportunities to play. And that was what sort of reignited my interest, was the opportunity and the possibility of playing in the jazz band in high school. So got with a new teacher, with the spark again. And, I think that's important to recognize that it can come and go. And, you can get students who are super motivated and they stay motivated all the way through their studying with you or through their lives, and fantastic. Love those kids. And then you get some people who are like, they're into it. And then they go through stretches where things get busy and works hard and blah, blah, blah. And, I feel like my job is to just help them stay connected to it sometimes, and that the spark will come back later when there's room for it, Yeah.
Very
well
cool.
said.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well said.
But
How about you, Bart?
Candy's also a good motivator.
I give out
Hey.
beer.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm coming to take a lesson with you, Rick.
Yeah. I'm kidding.
A couple of years ago, I'd have been all in. I'm on my way. I'd have been.
Yeah. No, that ain't right. Sorry.
For me, it's kind of a combination of everything that the three of you said. It's definitely different for everybody. Because I have, I know, Rick, you mostly work with adults,
Right.
and my age range is from, my youngest right now is like 5, and my oldest student is he's in his 70s, and every gamut from complete beginners to like somebody that, man, okay, I got Steve coming today. I got to be on top of my game. I better get warmed up. I mean, people that can really play. And I think that you have to meet the student where they're at sometimes, to kind of help them along. I also believe that drum lessons are a lot of times with younger kids or whatever, it is all about here's how you play the drums, whether it be a groove or a technique thing or a rudimental thing. And we're working on grip and stroke and getting them ready for high school band or college band or playing in a rock band or just learning the song that they want to learn. And I also think, Jeremy, you and I have talked about this. Actually, all four of us have talked about this. Is sometimes drum lessons are therapy.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah, they are.
you've got to be almost part therapist. I think I have a couple of students that the first 10 or 15 minutes of their lesson, they're just talking to me about stuff. They're
Yeah.
talking to me about their life and what's going on and how the drums are relating to it.
Mhm.
I have one drum student in particular that I see every week on Thursdays like clockwork for years. And he was a lot like what you were saying, Jeremy. Hey, I just want to know how to play a drum groove and I want to know how to play a Beatles song. And I'm like, all right, give it an hour.
Mhm.
And we had him going through, we had him playing along and he was playing Michelle and you could see the spark ignite in him. But then it went from, okay, now I want to know this song, this song, this song, to, hey, I'm going to go to a jam night at this club over here. They're having a blues jam, talking him through that.
Right.
And then you just kind of coach them through that. I
Well,
think finding the spark in a younger student that is trying out for, let's say, high school band or junior high band, you have to get them prepared for that. And I think being honest with them sometimes and saying, look, what we've all talked about, when you're practicing, you're doing something that you're not good at. You got to play something right now that you can't do, and you're going to have to do it over and over and over again until you get better at it. And when you get better at it, then you will be able to play out of the Will Coxon book, or you will be able to play this solo that you're going to try out for junior high band and get them interested in that. Like the
mhm.
Tom Sawyer thing, Jeremy. Here's
Mhm.
this paradiddle thing that you don't like to practice. Well, look, here in your solo that you're trying to do for
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
tryout, there's that paradiddle. Let's
Right.
work on that.
Right.
That
Right.
kind of thing. And momotivating them, fanning the spark a little bit,
Right.
getting it to
Right.
glow under a flame. Does
Well,
that make sense?
and 100%. Yeah, that was well said, Bart. It's important to recognize. I think we've all said this in some way that the horizon keeps receding.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you think, when you start out, you might have a goal. Oh, I want to be able to play a Beatles song. Well, that happens, you know, with it fairly quickly, and then, well, what next, right? And then part of it is our job to help them, as the world. It's like when they first come in, they can only see through this tiny little peephole into the
Yeah.
world of drums and what they can see and understand. And as they get deeper in, that world starts expanding and expanding, and that's part of our job to show them what's all out there. And sometimes I've had students become inspired by something I come in with that I hadn't even thought of. I'll pick up a lick off of one of Chip's videos online, and I'll show them this cool linear fill, and all of a sudden they're like, "Whoa, that's super cool! Let's get into linear fills," and we start talking about that. So that's
Yeah.
happened, Chip, for real.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, right. And so, part of the important thing, to help them keep the horizon receding. I mean, we've been doing it for whatever 20, 30, 40 years, each of us. Um, and we know a lot more than they do, because then that's why they're coming to take lessons with us. But I think it's important for our own horizons to keep receding too. We're always getting inspired
Oh
by
yeah.
other drummers and music. And, last week we had Alex Cohn and Ramon Montagnier on the show. And these are two guys who are pushing the boundaries. I mean, oh my God, doing
Yeah.
things on the drum set that no one has been able to do up until this point. So, you know, that's one of the cool things about it, is you're never done.
You know,
Exactly.
this
I
I found this a little bit interesting too. If I'm writing a chapter for one of the books, like right now I'm writing a bunch of shuffles. I'm really enthusiastic about shuffles.
Mm-hmm.
And my shuffle playing is super super fresh. So I'm kind of fired up. So if it's a great time for me to start teaching shuffles to the students that are ready for shuffles and have an
Right.
interest in shuffles.
Because you're working on them.
Because
Right.
I'm so fired up about it.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Absolutely.
and I'll even have a demo page, like a draft page of what I'm
Mhm.
working on, and I'll say, this is going to be in a future book. What do you think about it?
Hmm.
And then they're playing like, this is going to be in the future book. Cool. I'm like, yeah, what do you like? What do you think of that song to that beat? And they're like, that'll be so cool. So they're involved in the process.
That's
And
outstanding. That's really
Really
cool.
cool. You know,
yeah,
Very cool.
I was thinking about Rick, what you were saying earlier about your drum studio, and we all know how we all drool over your drum studio and how cool it is. And I would be super psyched to take lessons in there now as a kid at any point. And then I think about Dom Famularo, and I got to believe that I could take a lesson with Dom on a couple of tin cans and cardboard boxes
man,
Yes.
you are so right. I
Hell yeah.
totally,
Hell yeah.
totally agree.
and be
Totally
super
agree.
excited about doing it, right? And walk
Yeah.
away from that just being like, oh man, I can't wait to practice and dig into the stuff we were doing on those cardboard boxes.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, and I think that comes from the individual, because I
Yeah.
tell when I talk to my students about playing on a practice pad, like in here, I can't move the camera right now, but I have it's a small space here in the studio, and I have my practice pad on the front side of my drums. I have pads by the kit, but I have one on the front side of my kit, and it's this. Here, I'll pull it off and show you. It's on a Gibraltar cymbal stand, but it's this really cool Gretsch practice pad, right? I love this practice pad. Okay.
So cool.
It says Gretsch on it, right? That's cool.
Yeah, that's really
And
cool.
and I love playing on that pad. When I was a kid, we all had those little square, chunks of wood that, sat like this, and it had a real hard chunk of rubber on it, and it
Oh, yeah.
didn't bounce very well. I learned how to
Yeah.
play the drums on that thing. And I
Yeah.
think that's where you have to, and as a teacher, you have to, again, fan the flame a little bit sometimes and help that spark. But it also is up to the individual to keep that spark alive, and it's up to us to help fan that spark, I think. Because
Right.
if I had that practice pad here right now, that old piece of junk that I learned on, and whether it was, I would just have fun playing on it. Oh, I haven't played on this thing in years. What a piece of junk. I can still play on it though. And now I got my cool practice pad. I think that heartfelt thankfulness for the fact that we get to do this is something that we have to show to the student. I think that in and of itself can help fan the flames. I mean,
Mhm.
don't you guys
Absolutely.
think? Yeah.
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 Absolutely. One of my teachers used to play when I did a lesson. He would be in the room playing right before I came in. It was like every time I did the lesson, he was doing some kind of jazzy, cool beats or fills and soloing and stuff. And that in itself always lit me up, because I was always thinking to myself, this is something I can look forward to doing by myself. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
his enthusiasm, like Jeremy's saying, really lit that fire in me.
There it is.
Yep.
Right. Right.
Jim Royal's in the
Exactly.
house.
Is that Jim Royal who said that?
Jim
Jim
Royal.
Royal.
Of course it is.
Yes,
Jim
it
Royal,
is.
a fellow drummer educator who we respect tremendously, who, like his comment, has tremendous passion and enthusiasm and inspires his students all the time.
Yeah.
We love it.
That's
Yeah.
the guy. He's the
Jim's
pro
the
at that.
man.
Going back to our great friend, our hero, our mentor, Dom Famularo, I saw him in a clinic once, and he was describing a student who came in and said he wanted to sound. He was way into John Bonham. He was way into Led Zeppelin.
Mhm.
So Don said, "Okay, we're going to start off." The guy's like, "That's jazz." He goes, "No, I told you I want to play John Bonham." Dom's like, "I heard you." And this was going over and over and over. And Dom finally got it sunk in that the root of what John Bonham was into was all of these other feels, that the great part of Bonham's playing was the swing in his rock feel. So that's the magic in John Bonham. So we better start with that swing feel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just thought that was actually really, really brilliant. And you have to trust your teacher too in the direction that they're going to take you, and then decide if that's the right teacher for you. You might have to try different teachers and different fits.
I'm glad you brought that up, Rick, because I want to share a story, if I may, about a student that I had once who didn't work out. And I tend to be a very enthusiastic, very supportive, super patient teacher, and I don't crack the whip super hard on my students. I know there are other teachers who do that, who are much more like, you got to come in, you got to be prepared, or I'm not going to teach you, right? And I'm a little more sympathetic because I myself, when I was a kid, sort of whatever, I went through periods of not practicing, but ended up sticking with it, obviously, right? And I know that's how it can go for people. Not everyone's going to be the perfect student. But in any case, I had a student who was in high school, ADHD kid, and pretty good drummer, double bass player, and he would come to his lessons unprepared all the time. He wouldn't practice, and 1 or 2 weeks, no practicing. Okay, things get busy, but after 2 weeks, we have the talk, because what's going on? Is there a motivational problem? What's the time? How much time do you have? Let's come up with a practice. Let's come up with a practice plan. Oh yeah, they know. They all call it the talk, and they don't want to have the talk more than once, right? And I say, like, well, if you don't want to have the talk, you got to start doing the work, man. Anyway, so that's usually my approach is like 1 week, no big deal. 2 weeks, what's going on? 3 weeks, we have to have the talk about what's happening. And is this the right time for you to be playing drums, taking lessons, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I had a student, and he clearly was into drumming, a really good player, and he would come in unprepared all the time, not just not having practice, but he wouldn't have his books. And I could tell, I saw he'd come in, he'd have his binder like from his school, and it would be, papers all over the place, crumpled up, and clearly a kid who struggled with organization, right? And taking care of his stuff. And we've all run into that. Maybe some of us have been that kid ourselves. And I tried everything I could. We came up with a practice plan. We came up with a reward system. We came up with, let's just give me one practice this week. And these are the 2 things I want you to work on, and I'm going to text me when you do it. All this stuff, nothing. And this went on for quite a while. I mean, probably a few months where like he'd come in and we'd work on stuff during the lesson, but he didn't really make a lot of progress because he wasn't putting any work in, and he would always be unprepared with his stuff. And finally I said, hey, look, maybe you should consider trying lessons with a different teacher. Maybe that'd be a better fit or something.
Or
and
tuba.
because I can, what's that?
Or tuba.
Yeah, right.
Hey, as a side note, what do you call a tuba player with a business card?
An optimist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, an optimist. Sorry, Jeremy. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. So I recommended another guy, a local drummer, really good, also really good teacher. And a few months later, I ran into my student again, and I said, "Hey, how's it going? Did you ever end up taking lessons with that other guy? You're still playing?" And he said, "Oh yeah, you're not going to believe what happened, Jeremy. I went for the first lesson and it was cool, and then I came for the second lesson, and just like I come to you every time, I wasn't prepared. I hadn't practiced. I didn't have my books, just like usual." And he said to me, "I'm not willing to work with you. Like, you have one more chance. If you want to keep studying with me, you got to come in. You have to have practiced X number of times, and you have to have your books. And if you don't, that's the end of this."
Yeah.
And he said, and it worked. And I've been practicing ever since, and I've been prepared ever since. And I was like, oh my God, if I'd only thought to do that, to sort of bring the hammer down and say, look, we're done unless you step up, maybe that would have worked with him. And now that's, it's fine. I don't regret it. I learned something from the whole experience. But,
right.
Some teachers, they're like that. They're very strict, and that's part of how they motivate their students. That's part of how they get the spark out of their students, is with that strict motivation and expectation. And other students do it more other teachers do it more gently.
Some people need a coach. Some people need a drill sergeant. Some people need a therapist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I want to echo that, because that's what I was going to say, Rick. I mean, I've had the students that and I think as a drum teacher, you have to instinctively kind of feel the student out and know which one they are, right? Because like you said, there are some students that I got that and I hate being the drill sergeant. I hate being a
Yeah.
heavy, man. I don't like
Yeah.
it. But
Right.
there's a couple of them that I have to be that way. And then there's other students, and I've done the opposite where I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but I get tunnel vision, and the student is like right there. They're ready to play the part. Okay, one more time, do it again. You're almost there. And then, oh man, that was so close. You know what? Just do it one more time.
Mhm.
Oh man, that was so close. And then you look over and the tears
Oh,
are
yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
Oh, and I hate that too because I messed up. I had to have I was like, I was thinking of it as if it was me. Oh, I'm almost there. I just got to play it 4 more times.
Right.
And you see the student that way. Well, now you've hit them pretty hard in the heart, and it I don't want to say it breaks their spirit, but maybe they feel like they're letting you down, and I hate that.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
Well,
So
and
you gotta kind of
right.
feel that. You
And
got to be in
there's
tune with that.
I totally agree, Bart, and that's kind of why I brought this up, because it can be so different from student to student. And you could imagine another student of yours in the same exact situation, and that would have been exactly the right way to handle it, where they were like,
Mhm.
oh man, I can't wait to get back in and show Bart that I nailed this finally, right? And I'm going
Right,
to work on
yeah.
this all week because I want to get it perfect. I have a student like that. I
Yeah.
have several, and I have other students, and if I take that approach, just like you say, it'll end in tears and like, oh boy, what do I want to keep coming back for to get beat up every week?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It's the last thing you need.
I have this student right now that he's been working. Oh my God, this kid has been working his butt off on Back in Black, and this brings up another subject. It's not just about playing Back in Black for this kid. It's about reading the transcription and playing it and reading it note perfect. That's
Mhm.
he's set his goal, and we're at the end of the guitar solo coming out of it, and it's bop bop bop, crash 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 crash, that section, right? And it's 8 bars, and every time he gets to it, it's a mind screw for him now, because he's like, he'll play it, and then when he's like, I nailed it, he gets into the lesson and he can't play it because, and I'm like, dude, don't think about me. Here, I'll turn, and he's online, I'll turn the camera off, I'm not even in the room, just play it for me, and he's really struggling with it. So the other day I was like, look, I know you can do this, you can do it. Let's take a break. Let's go on to another song. And then we'll come back to this in, a couple weeks, practice a little bit more. He was adamant. It wasn't no, it was hell no.
Right.
No, I am doing this. And I was like, okay, bro, you okay. And so I was pushing him harder. And see, to me, there's where I learned something again as a teacher, because I didn't want to break the kid's spirit, so I tried to go the opposite way. I'll tell you what, why don't we just set this on the table for a little bit?
Right.
And he was like, hell no, I want to conquer this, and that's the kid that's like the running back. He just keeps hitting the line, and pushing him back. But I love that.
That's a very special student.
What's that, Chip?
That's the kid I want in my band.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And Rick, you said it's a very special student.
Absolutely.
Right.
One of the things that I feel is my job as a teacher is to give them tangible goals.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be a day where they're really not getting. Maybe we're working on reggae beats, and they've been messing with it. And sometimes I'm like, well, all right, let's just do some other kind of groove, or a different beat, just so there's just little increments that they're growing up. So if they stick with it, in time, I think they're going to be able to swirl back and get all the stuff they were struggling with at one point.
One of the things that connects what you just said, Rick, with what Bart was talking about is the idea of success.
Yeah.
And, it can be with the two different personality types, the one who's like, I'm going to do this till I get it, versus the one who's going to end up in tears if you ask them to do it 3 times in a row.
Right.
The key for each of them is helping them succeed, right? Because everybody likes and wants success, and success breeds more success because it makes you feel good. Like, hey, I got it. That's exciting. Little dopamine rush. You get the approval from the teacher. You get your own good feeling. and that breeds on itself, right? And that's
Yep.
what keeps you going and keeps you motivated. If you're failing over and over, you know, some people, there's no greater motivation than failure because they're just going to do it till they get it. For other people, that can end up becoming a fork in the road. Like, oh man, this just isn't for me. I suck. I'm no good at this. It's too hard, right?
Yep.
And so as a teacher, it's our job to set them up to succeed. And so, like you say, Rick, you've got to figure out what it is to give them that's going to be challenging, but that they can succeed with the proper or certain amount of effort. You know, for
Yes.
example, if you had
Right.
someone come in, say an adult student, whatever, and they said, oh, I want to, learn to play this song, and you know that the song, well, that's like a pretty sophisticated song. They want to play Two Princes, that, and it's got that
Yeah.
complicated groove. Like,
Yeah.
well, that's cool, but if you give it to them, that's just going to be nothing but frustration for a long time because they don't have the toolkit for that yet, right? That's like,
Right.
you're not going to jump in and try to do something too advanced.
Well, that's where you meet them where they're at.
Exactly. That's all I'm saying. Meeting where they're at, meaning give them something that is level appropriate that they can succeed with a certain amut of effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
exactly
what I want to say this too. You kept saying, success, and using that a lot. One of the things that I say to my students all the time: use your success. And my example of that, a minute ago, I talked about my student who wanted to do a Beatles song, and so we did Michelle, right? And we know Michelle, it swings ding ga ding ga ding ga ding ga. Well, hey, use your success. Now let's take that and let's play "Gotta Get You Into My Life." Let's play ding ga ging ga. Here go ging ga ging ga ging ga ging ga ging ga ging ga. Second group ging ga ging ga ging ga ging ga. I'm a dork. You guys know exactly what I'm saying. People are tuning in going, why is this guy making those weird sounds? But you guys, you speak my language. But
Yes.
the two grooves, those three grooves, the Michelle and then the two grooves for "Gotta Get You Into My Life," they all work together. And if you can play this one, whether you can play this one, you can play this one. And there's that dopamine rush you were talking about, Jeremy. Because you're like, oh, wow, now I can play two Beatles songs.
Yeah.
I think that interesting. If you think about it, if you break it down, like one of my teachers told me when I started working with him to get into jazz and started doing the jazz right pattern. And he looked me straight in the face and he said, if you can play jazz well, you can play anything well.
Yeah.
If
right.
you have an understanding about jazz music,
it's true.
What it takes to play in any other music is fundamentally already baked in.
Well, think about what Alex said last week, right? He was like, I got all these metal shredders that come to me and maybe they don't have good independence and they want to get their independence up. I'm like, okay, let's go through John Riley's Art of Bop Drumming. And Alex, when you think about Alex, dude, that dude is Mr. Shred double bass metal guy. And he's got a degree in jazz performance.
Mm-hmm.
and he's playing metal music at a level that is up there with Slipknot. One of us said, Rick, you said Slipknot earlier. It's up there with Joey Jorgensen and that crazy stuff. And a lot of this comes from that jazz thing. So I think that's up to the teacher too, right? Because what happens when you have a student that comes to you and says, hey, I want to learn how to play, Gotta Get You Into My Life. Well, okay, you got to learn how to swing. I'm not saying you got to be, I'm going to turn you into a jazz guy, but let's learn how to swing. And then it opens up that door for jazz. And you're like, oh, here's some Miles Davis. Here's some Diana Krall. Here's some, all that sort of stuff. It opens that door.
I'll say this
conversation.
Too. When I was a kid, and my most formative teacher was the one I studied with in high school. His name was Norman Grossman, jazz player in New York City. And the first 45 minutes out of every 60-minute lesson with him were on the pad, working on my hands. Mm-hmm. And at the time, man, I friggin' hated it. I was like, let me play the drum set. Let me rock out. And he forced me to go through the Wilcoxon books and my accent patterns and my rolls and my rudiments. And, it was like vegetables, right? 45 minutes of vegetables, 15 minutes of dessert. And at the time I hated it. And now I am so grateful for all that approach, because my hands are where they are because of him, really.
Yeah.
the work he
You
made
know,
me do.
I wanted to bring up the art of listening and teaching listening. Um, I sometimes I'll have a student, they'll say, "Well, I didn't have time to practice. I didn't have time to get on the drums." That's usually what it is. I didn't have time to get on the drums. I said, "Well, I've taught you to read music, and I've got songs, a ton of songs listed here with the beat for that entire song. So you don't even need to be on your drum set. All you need to be doing is listening to the song and just trying to follow the beat
Mhm.
and counting the beat." And I just think developing listening skills is so forgotten about. We as
Mhm.
teachers so often are about speed, and I think social media um, sort of feeds that speed. But
Yeah.
I think if you are to ask any of us, really, are you better than we were 10 years ago? A lot of us would say, yeah, I'm better, a pro drummer. And why? Because I'm a better listener.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. The
You know?
listening is like I was talking about listening. If you're not able to listen to your student, you're not ever going to find the spark in there.
Right.
You
It's
Yeah.
have to
listening
be
to
able to
what
pay
they
attention.
want. Yeah, Chip, exactly. It's listening to what they want, but then listening to songs and listening to how the drums fit in and
Yeah.
listening. It's like they're always trying to figure out the drum part, right? I'm like,
Mhm.
no, I just want you to groove. I want you to listen to the bass part and how
Yeah.
the drums fit in with that bass part.
Because
And
that
why
affects it. Yeah.
yeah, why did the drummer play that? And I found that that's how to get a spark, and then really knowing history too. I've got a lot of Motown beats and the Pistol Allen, tap tap tapo tapo beats, and tons of songs, and you teach them that history about Motown and that particular beat, and suddenly they're, "Hey Rick, you showed me that Motown beat last week, and I heard it all week just on the radio, and I never would have even known what that was before."
Yeah, yeah. I
What
had it. That's so well said, Rick. It's
Thank
so
you.
well said. And and the fact that you know that, right? The fact that you have the history and that little bit of knowledge. Um, and I just want to kind of second that. I had a student last night, one of my longtime students, and she was I never really realized it till last night, but we had never played anything in 6/8. And she was asking me about, 6/8, how is, 6/8 and 3/8 and 12/8 and 9/8, how does that all work? And
Yeah.
so I have this whole thing that I do when I talk about compound time signatures, where it's kind of determined on the melody line and how it works. And so we went into this whole big breakdown. We talked for most of the lesson. I sent her over a page. I emailed it to her, or some 6/8 drum beats that I teach to all of my students when they want to start getting into 6/8. And then it started getting into eighth note type of grooves, and we started talking about 7/8 from there. And then we went from, because of the 7/8, we started talking about the ocean and metric modulation. It went into this really deep musical rhythmic theory
Yeah.
conversation, and it
And
was a
now
lot
she's
of
playing
fun.
Tool.
Yeah, and it was total drumming vegetables, right? It was total vegetables, but she got a lot about
right.
it. And at the end of it, she could play some 6/8. She could play the 2 bar phrase to the ocean at the top of 4/4/7/8, and she understood the metric modulation. And last but not least, it really helped her and answered her question for this thing that she was trying to do with a piece of music. So I totally agree with you, Rick, is what I'm trying to say, that
Yeah.
you have to have that, just a couple of little pieces of information, and it grows into this big explosion of information,
Well, my
That's it.
my point that I was getting to was just about the idea of the vegetables, because not every student knows what they are, or of course, or wants to have them, wants to do that kind of work, right? But
Right.
if
Hmm.
if your
Mhm.
goals, if your aspirations are to be, to play at a professional level, there's a certain amount of technique you've got to just put the time in on.
Hmm.
And
Right.
that may not be the most exciting, most fun thing to practice, but as a teacher, that's part of the job. It's like, okay, well,
And
this is
that
what you want to do. This is
That's
what you need
also-
to do. It's not all
Yeah.
it's not all fun and games. It's work too.
Yeah.
That's also part of our job, is to show them the path to that good stuff.
Right.
Here's this boring stuff, but
Right.
let me show you how that, like Bart was saying, it in that one song, in that Neil Peart lick, he's doing this paradiddle
Right.
right here. So this is how that relates, and here's the path to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that reminds me, Chip, one time, and this was years ago, you had put a thing on Facebook, and you were joking around, and you were like, I don't want to practice my paradiddles. And so then all of a sudden you started playing some paradiddles, and then you went into sing, sing, sing. And you had the groove to sing, sing, sing written down below.
Yeah.
And I went, that's how you play it, first of all. And then I wrote it out. And then I wrote it on my whiteboard in my old studio. And I remember, because of that, I took a picture of that on my whiteboard, and I put it on your social media, and I said, thank you, Chip Ritter, for teaching myself and my students sing, sing, sing today.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember you and I had a laugh about that. And that is the exact thing where what we're talking about here. You took a paradiddle, you showed us how to play sing, 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 and put the paradiddle in sing, sing, sing. And hey, next thing you know, 20 people have been inspired by that. And I think that you found a spark in me for stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
that stuff is gold, man. That is pure gold. Yeah. So
You know what's
I had to share that.
interesting is when a student comes in and says, oh man, you play so effortlessly, and then they think they just want to do that. I'm like, dude, this is 40 years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I always say, when you witness somebody doing something they're really good at, you're witnessing the end result of a lot of hard work.
Right.
That's right.
And let's face it, Jeremy, you've said this before. You know, we don't play like each other.
Right.
You know, we don't. That doesn't mean that not all four of us are great drummers. Every time I sit down to play, I'm going to give you the best Bart Robley I got. I may not be the right guy for the job, but I'm going to give you the best that I got. And I try to put that into the lesson. And I think each one of us does that as well, you know. And then we draw upon each other. Man sharpens man like steel sharpens steel. Because like I just said, the thing that I did with Chip when he did the sing, sing, sing and the paradiddle. There's many times where I'll be in the middle of a lesson and oh man, hey, I know, let's grab Rick's book. And, you know, or Jeremy said this in his book, Finding the Groove, you know, I mean, all that.
When I know Bart's been working hard to get one of these.
I have, but the book's right here. Yeah. And oh my God.
He's going to play them for me to earn his badge.
Oh, I know.
So speaking of which, you know, the four of us being different drummers, some of you may not yet know, but we're going to have a live event for the first time ever.
Yeah.
We are?
Yeah.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
We're having
Holy cow.
Deck Day. It's going to be 4 different drum clinics. One clinic taught by each of us for 45 minutes. I'm going to put the link to get tickets in the chat. We're having it at the Aquarian Warehouse in Orange, California. It's right near Anaheim, so you can make it a Disneyland trip if you want to. Saturday, November 12th, from 1 to 5 p.m. We're going to have drum clinics. We're going to have product demos. We're going to have a tour of the Aquarian facility, and we're going to give away a ton of free stuff. We've got sponsors lined up who are donating all sorts of fantastic prizes. We're going to raffle off some really big stuff, but we've got support from, I'm going to miss some here. You guys help me out. Vic Firth, Hudson Music, Mel Bay, Hal Leonard, Protection Racket, Snare Weight, Sky Gel Dampeners, Aquarian Drumheads, of course, who's hosting the event. Who am I missing?
Humes and Berg Cases.
Humes and Berg. Trick
Drums. Mel Bay Publications. Trick Drums.
Protection
Sabian
Racket.
Cymbals. Sabian Cymbals.
Vic Firth. ProLogic's practice pads. I mean, you guys, we've got all of our sponsors are stepping up to support us with this, and we would love to see you come out. We also, if you can't make it down to LA on November 12th, you can also stream this clinic live. You can purchase a ticket to stream it. We'll have a limited closed group for that, and you'll get all the educational content for just half the price. Tickets are $40 to come in person, $20 to come to check it out online.
Sky gel
you-
damper pads.
Yep. You could
That's-
win so many of these prizes. What's the grand prize?
We don't know
A
yet.
dream
A
date with Chip
Chip
Ritter.
Ritter.
Dream date with Chip Ritter. All right. You're going to take him out in his Chip Corvette, and
You're gonna eat
they're
Chips
going to go
Ahoy.
to the. They're going to
And
go.
you're
They're
gonna
going to
eat
go out and have
Chips Ahoy
some. They're going to
cookies.
eat some Chips Ahoy on the beach. It's going to
He
be.
will anoint you with his technology.
Oh man!
Oh,
Come
you
on,
beat him
come
to
on.
it. You beat him to
No, I'm not sure that means what you think it means, Rick.
it. Yeah, Rick. What do you? At least
All right,
maybe
all
he's gonna.
That's got to be some good coffee, yo.
Yeah. All right, please come
Oh,
join us.
man.
It's going to be a great day. Should be a really good turnout. We're expecting a lot of people, and it's going to be super fun.
Yes,
All
and
right.
I want to send a personal thanks. I know we all do, because the one endorsement that we all share, that we all have in common, is Aquarian Drumheads, and Aquarian has been a huge part of the Drummers Education Connection ever since we started it. And Chris Brady and Mike Bruker and everybody over there is just phenomenal people, and the fact that we're gonna host this at Aquarian is just going to be huge. It's just going to be huge. The drumming community is such a tight group of people, and they all want to see. Everybody wants to see the other drummers succeed, and just the fact that Aquarian is standing behind us on this and giving us the facility is phenomenal. And so we want to thank them.
Thank you, Chris Brady.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you, Chris Brady. Maybe
guys are the
Chris will
best.
win the dream date with Chip Ritter.
You know
Mhm.
what's exciting about it is that we're all professionals, but we're all so different from one another.
Yeah.
So I just think it's going to be exciting and interesting and informative the entire time.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
It's going to be great.
Totally.
All right, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. We will see you next week. We do have our 100th anniversary, 100th episode anniversary coming up in October. And our guest for that is going to be Dave Garibaldi from the Tower of Power. We're super excited to have him on in a few weeks. We will see you guys next week.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.